Sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction, hiding in plain sight until someone stumbles upon it. This is the story of Elmer McCurdy, a man whose death sparked a journey more incredible than his life. In 1976, a TV crew filming The $6 Million Man at the New Pike Amusement Park in Long Beach, California, made a shocking discovery. Inside a dark funhouse, a glowing orange figure hung from a rope, assumed to be a cheap mannequin. During filming, a crew member tried to move the figure. Its arm broke off, revealing not plastic, but bone. The dummy was a real human body, preserved for decades. An investigation began. Who was this man, and how did he end up here? The coroner's office found a 1924 penny and a museum ticket in the corpse's mouth, clues to a mystery over 60 years old. The body was identified as Elmer McCurdy, a failed outlaw who died in 1911. In life, he was a nobody. In death, he became a legend. His body traveled the country, mistaken for a prop, seen by thousands who never guessed the truth. This is the tale of how a forgotten outlaw became America's most famous mummy. How did a dead man travel farther than he ever did alive? The answer begins in a dusty barn in Oklahoma, and ends in a California funhouse. Elmer's story is a journey through time, myth, and the blurred line between reality and spectacle. Sometimes the most unbelievable stories are the ones that really happened, and Elmer McCurdy's story is one of them. To understand Elmer McCurdy's bizarre afterlife, we need to know the man behind the legend. Born in Maine in 1880, Elmer's life was marked by hardship and drifting from job to job. He tried plumbing, mining, even the army, but nothing stuck. Dreaming of outlaw fame, he turned to crime, but he was terrible at it. His first train robbery ended with him blowing up the safe and melting most of the loot. He escaped with only a handful of coins. Another time, he and his gang spent hours breaking into a bank, only to find themselves in the wrong building. Elmer's criminal career was a string of disasters. He was more punchline than public enemy, always one step behind luck. With no family, few friends, and a reputation for failure, he wandered the West, searching for meaning. He wanted to be remembered, but only found disappointment. His final heist would seal his fate, not with riches, but with a bullet. Elmer McCurdy's life was a series of missed chances, but his story was about to take a turn no one could have predicted. Sometimes, legends are born from failure, and Elmer's legend was just beginning. In October 1911, Elmer McCurdy was cornered in a hay barn after another failed train robbery. He'd stolen just $46 and 2 jugs of whiskey, hardly the haul of a legendary outlaw. A posse tracked him to a ranch near Pawhuska, Oklahoma. As dawn broke, lawmen surrounded the barn and called for his surrender. Elmer refused, firing his rifle in a desperate last stand. The gunfight echoed across the quiet fields, but Elmer was outnumbered and outgunned. After nearly an hour, a single bullet ended his life. He died at 31, alone and unknown. The lawmen brought his body to the local undertaker, expecting someone to claim him. No one came. Elmer was as alone in death as he'd been in life. The undertaker, Joseph Johnson, faced a dilemma: a body no one wanted. What Johnson did next would set Elmer on a path to infamy. The failed outlaw was about to become a sideshow legend. Sometimes the end is just the beginning. Elmer's story was far from over. His body would soon become a public spectacle. The outlaw's journey was only getting stranger, and the world was about to take notice. Elmer McCurdy's body sat unclaimed in Joseph Johnson's funeral home for weeks. Johnson, unable to bury him without payment or permission, preserved the body with arsenic, turning Elmer into a lifelike mummy. With no one to claim him, Johnson put Elmer on display as the bandit who wouldn't give up. For a nickel, townsfolk could gawk at the mummified outlaw. Elmer, a failure in life, became a local celebrity in death. For 5 years, he stood in the funeral home, attracting curious visitors. Offers poured in from carnival promoters, but Johnson refused to sell, unless family came forward. In 1916, 2 men arrived, claiming to be Elmer's long-lost brothers. Johnson, convinced by their story, released the body, but the men were frauds, carnival promoters eager for a new attraction. Elmer's journey was about to hit the road. The outlaw who couldn't find a place in life was now destined to travel America in death. Fame had finally found him, but not in the way he'd hoped. The legend of the mummified outlaw was just beginning. Sometimes, the dead refused to rest. And Elmer McCurdy was about to become a sideshow star. The carnival men wasted no time putting Elmer on display as the famous Oklahoma outlaw. His mummified body toured America, passed from one sideshow to another. Each new owner invented a fresh story. Sometimes he was a century-old man, sometimes a notorious criminal. The truth faded as Elmer became just another prop. He traveled with circuses, appeared in wax museums, and even promoted horror movies. The arsenic embalming kept him remarkably intact, but over time, he looked more like a dummy than a man. Audiences had no idea they were staring at a real corpse. By the 1960s, Elmer's identity was all but forgotten. He ended up in a Hollywood warehouse, then was sold to the New Pike Amusement Park in Long Beach. Painted orange and hung in the Laugh in the Dark funhouse, he became just another spooky prop. Thousands passed by, never suspecting the truth. The outlaw's long, strange journey was nearly at its end. But one final twist remained. Elmer McCurdy's secret was about to be revealed. For years, Elmer hung in the funhouse, mistaken for a cheap mannequin. Park staff dusted him off, touched up his paint, and never questioned his origins. He was just another prop, less real than the wax figures nearby. The irony, a real dead man ignored, while people paid to see fakes. Elmer had become the ultimate illusion, his true story buried under layers of paint and decades of neglect. The world had changed, but Elmer remained, a silent relic of the Wild West, hidden in plain sight. He witnessed generations pass, a forgotten piece of history. The funhouse was his home, the carnival his stage. Visitors felt a chill, never knowing it was real. The truth waited beneath the surface, ready to be discovered. All it took was a single accident to bring Elmer's story back to life. In December 1976, a TV crew filming the $6 Million Man prepared to use the hanging figure as a prop. A crew member tried to move it. The arm snapped off, revealing bone. Panic spread. Police and the coroner were called. The dummy was carefully removed and examined. Under layers of paint, they found a perfectly preserved mummy. Clues, a 1924 penny and a museum ticket, helped identify the body. Forensic science confirmed it. This was Elmer McCurdy, the outlaw who died in 1911. The story made national headlines. How did a failed outlaw become a funhouse prop? The answer was stranger than fiction. Elmer's afterlife had been more eventful than his life. The man who was a sideshow for decades was finally recognized. His journey was over. It was time for Elmer McCurdy to go home. The silent outlaw's story had come full circle. After decades as a sideshow, Elmer McCurdy was finally going home. In April 1977, his body was returned to Oklahoma for a proper burial. He was laid to rest in Boot Hill at Summit View Cemetery, a fitting end for an outlaw. Locals and press attended the quiet ceremony. To ensure he'd never be disturbed again, 2 feet of concrete were poured over his coffin. The man who'd been a public spectacle was finally given peace. Elmer's story became legend, a reminder that truth can be stranger than fiction. His journey from failed outlaw to America's most famous mummy was over. The lines between entertainment and exploitation had blurred, but Elmer finally found rest. Under the wide Oklahoma sky, the silent outlaw's story was at last complete. Sometimes the most incredible mysteries are the ones that are true.